Listen carefully, because this isn't just another speech. It's the sound of something breaking open. My name is Ibrahim Traoré, and I am not here to please. I am not here to whisper behind closed doors. I speak now because silence has become a weapon against us, and I refuse to wield it any longer. There comes a moment when dignity burns hotter than fear, when the weight of history presses so hard on your chest, you either speak or suffocate. That moment is now. And this fire inside me, inside all of us, it can't be smothered. Not anymore. In the heart of Burkina Faso, beneath the scorching sun of Ouagadougou, I stood before a room overflowing with bodies and breath and tension. Journalists, officers, elders, youth, all of them waiting. No script, no teleprompter. Just the truth, raw and unfiltered, rising from a place that has been denied too long. Cameras clicked, eyes locked, and for a brief second, the noise of the world seemed to vanish, replaced by a silence that begged to be shattered. So I looked directly into the lens, and I said what had to be said. This wasn't rhetoric. This was reckoning. We are no longer anyone's colonies. We are sovereign. If any foreign leader thinks they can threaten Africa into submission, they are gravely mistaken. There was no applause, no chatter, just stillness, sharp, heavy, undeniable. You could feel it crawl across the room, pressing against every heart and spine. But I didn't stop there. I stepped forward. My voice didn't rise, but it hardened. Let me make this crystal clear, I said. Burkina Faso does not answer to Tel Aviv. We don't answer to Washington. We don't answer to anyone who believes their money or their missiles can dictate how we live. These words weren't for show. They were a line drawn in stone, a refusal, a breaking of chains still disguised as diplomacy. Whether Netanyahu said those words or not, about African leaders needing to stay in line, it doesn't even matter. What matters is the assumption behind it, the belief that Africa is still a place where threats can shape decisions, where fear can bend knees. That belief ends now. Because this isn't just about one statement or one country, it's not even about one man. This is about centuries, about the hands that reached across oceans and treated our homes like empty spaces, about the silence we were expected to keep while others carved out our resources, rewrote our stories, and told us who we were allowed to become. And now, when someone like me stands and speaks, clear, direct, without compromise, they don't know what to do. That silence in response, that absence of condemnation or argument from the usual powers, speaks volumes. They're not used to defiance. They're used to obedience dressed as diplomacy. They're used to African voices being managed, mediated, muted, not this time. This fire, this refusal to shrink back, this urgency in my chest, it isn't mine alone. It belongs to every person who ever looked at a flag and wondered if it truly represented them. It belongs to every child taught someone else's history, every village overlooked, every voice dismissed. So I lit the match, yes. But this fire, it's spreading, and no amount of silence from abroad will put it out. Let's set the record straight. This is not about Netanyahu. It's not about Israel. This is about something far deeper, far older. It's about a system, silent, polished, well-dressed, that has, for generations, treated Africa not as a partner, not as a sovereign land, but as property, as a prize, as a pawn to be moved when convenient, ignored when not. The words I spoke were never meant for one man or one flag. They were a message to all who still believe that this continent is theirs to manipulate. Those who sign deals behind closed doors, who disguise domination as diplomacy, who wrap chains in velvet and call it aid. Because if you've ever believed Africa can be bought, owned, steered, or silenced, then yes, I was speaking to you. This isn't personal, but it is urgent. This isn't a grudge, it's a reckoning. And the time for polite correction is over. For too long, we've tried to reason with a system designed to keep us beneath. We've shaken hands that stole from us, smiled in rooms where our fate was decided without us. We played the game, followed the rules, wrote the reports, attended the summits, and still, we were expected to stay quiet while others built their empires on our soil. So no, I didn't write a letter. I didn't wait for the next diplomatic window. I stood up and spoke loudly because whispers have gotten us nowhere. The world never respected our silence. They misread it as consent. And I refuse to be misunderstood any longer. There comes a moment when you look at the way things have always been and say, that's enough. Enough pretending that foreign bases are here to help. Enough pretending that loans are gifts. Enough nodding while others profit from the sweat of our people, the minerals beneath our feet, the waters that should nourish us, not serve corporations thousands of miles away. Because what they call development, we've come to know as dependence. What they brand as support too often becomes surveillance. And what they claim is partnership has looked far too much like possession. This story didn't begin with my speech. It began with carved borders, with treaties we never signed, with languages forced into our classrooms, with economies broken and rebuilt to serve others. They drew lines on a map, split tribes, renamed rivers, and taught us to forget. Forget who we were before they arrived. Forget that we once stood tall without them. But memory is a stubborn thing. And now it returns, not as sorrow, but as fire. A fire that tells us we don't need permission to exist. We don't need approval to lead. And we don't need aid that comes with a leash. This is the hour where history demands courage. And if that courage makes others uncomfortable, so be it. We have been uncomfortable for centuries. It's their turn now. In the center of West Africa stands a nation that has learned to say one powerful word: enough. Burkina Faso is not the richest, not the most militarized, not the loudest on the world stage. But we are awake, and we are done playing by someone else's script. For decades, we lived with foreign flags waving above our soil, foreign generals whispering into the ears of our leaders, and foreign companies drawing more wealth from our land than we ever saw ourselves, all in the name of security, all in the name of cooperation. But how can you call it security when your people live in fear? How can you call it partnership when one side always gains and the other is left begging? We started asking the questions that were once whispered in back rooms, and then we stopped asking altogether. We started acting. We said no to military bases that served foreign interests, no to trade deals that chained us to poverty, no to diplomats who arrived with smiles and left with contracts signed in our blood. Burkina Faso became a signal fire in the dark, a place where resistance turned from idea into policy. And when we stood up, we didn't just rise for ourselves. We rose for every nation still held back by invisible hands. Our courage wasn't born in isolation. It was born from necessity. Because when your children grow up watching wealth leave their land in trucks they can't touch, something inside you snaps. Not with hate, with clarity. And then something happened. Something no foreign policy expert could have predicted. My words left that press room in Ouagadougou and took flight. They raced through Telegram chats, surged across WhatsApp groups, lit up timelines on X. The speech wasn't carefully packaged. It wasn't part of a media strategy. It was raw, unpolished, urgent, and that's exactly why it resonated. Millions heard it not as news, but as recognition. A voice they didn't know they were waiting for until it spoke. In Mali, young people gathered in circles replaying the clip, heads nodding not in agreement, but in alignment. In Niger, farmers passed phones from hand to hand, translating my words into local tongues so no one would miss the message. In Guinea, it wasn't the ministers who responded first. It was the soldiers, the mothers, the students. They didn't wait for permission to care. They just did. And in South Africa, Ghana, even the diaspora, the message struck the same nerve. We are not alone. But this wasn't just public reaction. It was leadership. Colonel Assimi Goïta in Mali didn't hesitate. He reposted the video with a single line. "We hear you, brother." In Guinea, Mamadi Doumbouya stood tall and said, "I stand with him." No need for long declarations. Sometimes unity is as simple as a name and a gesture. What began as a speech became a signal. And what began in Burkina Faso echoed across the continent. For the first time in a long time, Africa wasn't reacting to outside pressure. It was responding to its own awakening. And the response was not passive. It was electric. It was continental. It was a reminder that while our countries may carry different names, our struggle is shared. And when one of us rises, we all feel it in our bones. Sovereignty is not a flag. It is not an anthem. It is not a speech delivered at an international summit. Sovereignty is action. It is the ability to choose our own path without waiting for permission. It is control over who enters our borders, who extracts our minerals, who profits from our labor, and who has a say in how we govern our people. Real sovereignty does not come with independence documents kept in dusty archives. It lives in every policy we pass that protects our people, in every agreement we reject that would make us dependent, and in every refusal to be treated like a recipient instead of a partner. For years, African countries were praised for being stable, as long as we did not resist, as long as we accepted loans tied to conditions, treaties that served others, and silence in exchange for crumbs. But sovereignty means breaking that pattern, even if it makes others uncomfortable. It means saying no when the world expects a yes. It means choosing dignity over convenience. Because let's not be naive. The world is a chessboard, and for too long, Africa has been treated as the board itself, not even as a player. Western nations move their pieces. Military bases, intelligence networks, multinational corporations, and expect us to sit still while they calculate their next move. To them, we are not kings or queens. We are pawns, expendable and replaceable. We are a resource, not a voice, a location, not a partner. But the new generation of African leaders sees the game for what it is, and we refuse to play by their rules. We're not just flipping the board, we're building our own. Because we've learned that waiting for others to see our value is a strategy of the past. Now we define that value ourselves. Not with slogans, but with alliances, forged not by pressure, but by purpose. That's why we built the Sahel Alliance. Not as a symbolic gesture, not as a protest, as a shield, as a promise, as a beginning. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, we are no longer isolated voices shouting into the wind. We are a single formation, a united bloc bound by more than geography. We've faced the same enemies, heard the same threats, lost the same brothers, and now we've chosen the same path forward. One of protection, cooperation, and shared sovereignty. The Sahel Alliance is not just about defense, it's about construction. We're building joint institutions. We're coordinating security across borders. We're ensuring that when one of us is threatened, none of us stands alone. It's not perfect, it's not easy, but it's real, and for the first time, it is ours. This alliance isn't the end goal, it's the foundation. a starting point for something larger, something continental. It proves that unity is not a fantasy. It is a choice. And we have chosen to rise, not as individual states with separate chains, but as a single fist that no longer bends, no longer begs, and never again forgets its strength. This moment is not just another cycle. It's not one more speech destined to vanish beneath the weight of bureaucracy and apathy. This time is different, because the world has shifted. The powers that once dictated global order are faltering under their own contradictions. The old empires are distracted, divided, exhausted by crises of their own making. And while they stumble, Africa is waking up. For decades, we were told to wait. Wait for fairness, for development, for recognition. But now we're done waiting. We've realized that the world doesn't grant justice. It reacts to strength. And that strength isn't just military or economic. It's the power of collective clarity. A new consciousness is rising across our continent. You can feel it in the streets, in the conversations, in the refusal to bow. We no longer define progress by how close we are to pleasing foreign capitals. We define it by how free we are to choose our own future. And if any country embodied the old model, the illusion of partnership masking control, it was France. France didn't just have embassies and cultural centers. It had command posts, bases, advisors embedded in every corner of our systems. Their presence was always explained as stability. But for whom? While our people struggled, France made billions off our resources. While our young men died in conflicts stoked by foreign policy, French troops secured mining zones. They called it cooperation. We saw it for what it was. And then something broke. We said no more. Mali did it. Niger did it. Burkina Faso did it. We pulled their soldiers out, rejected their diktats, and tore up agreements signed in eras we no longer accept. The air shifted, and the silence from Paris was louder than any retaliation, because deep down, they knew their era here was ending, not with blood, but with clarity. France, like others before it, must now learn to knock on the door as a guest, not enter as a master. Because Africa's diplomacy is no longer reactive. We are not standing in line, hands out, waiting for invitations to speak. We are setting the terms. We are building partnerships that reflect respect, not dependence. We no longer whisper in corridors. We sit at the table, or we build our own. This isn't rebellion, it's reality. Africa is not a project, it's a force, and every nation that hopes to engage with us must understand that the rules have changed. And in the face of all this, something fascinating happened. Nothing. After my speech, the very leaders who once never missed a chance to lecture us suddenly went quiet. No angry press releases, no counter-statements, no late-night calls warning of consequences. Just silence. A long, heavy silence that said everything. They weren't prepared. They had no script for defiance that wasn't violent. No answer to a voice that didn't tremble. And it wasn't just Israel. Western governments, media outlets, think tanks, they averted their eyes. Pretended not to hear, as if, by ignoring our words, they could erase their meaning. But silence is a poor shield. Because people see, people feel, and when a voice like mine echoes without response, it doesn't fade, it grows. So we turned inward. We stopped waiting for permission to be heard. We built our own microphones, our own networks, our own rhythm. Across encrypted apps, across digital platforms, across languages, the message kept moving. West to east, north to south. The traditional media could ignore us, but the people could not. We found each other, not through CNN or the BBC, but through voices unfiltered, uncensored, undeniable. And in doing so, we discovered something even more powerful than being seen by others: the strength of finally seeing ourselves. I never set out to become a symbol. I didn't wake up one morning with the goal of being the face of resistance or the voice that echoed across a continent. I'm just a man from Burkina Faso, a soldier, a son, a citizen. But something happens when you speak from the depth of conviction. People hear more than your words. They hear themselves. They see what they've long hoped for but could never touch. And when that happens, something shifts. You stop being just a leader. You become a mirror, a flag, a promise. The messages poured in, not from governments, but from the people. From young women in Bamako, elders in Wahiguya, students in Dakar. Their words weren't polished. They were real. Thank you for saying what we've all felt. Now I believe we can rise. You speak for us. And with each voice, I felt something heavier than duty. Responsibility. Not to maintain power, but to deserve trust. This fire we feel didn't begin with a speech or a slogan. It's ancient. It's carved into our memory. Our ancestors were not silent victims. They were warriors, thinkers, rebels. They were kings torn from thrones, queens stripped of crowns, people who dreamed of freedom even in chains. That spirit never left us. It just went underground, waiting, and now it returns, not as a whisper, but as a roar. We are the descendants of resistance, the sons and daughters of those who dared to dream under occupation, who wrote freedom into the soil with their blood. They built what they could with what they had. And now, we carry that blueprint forward. This struggle we live is not a break from the past. It's its continuation. But we are not building only barricades. We are building schools. Not just shields, but hospitals. Not only speeches, but systems. This movement is not fueled by rage alone, but by vision. We want classrooms that teach our children the names of African heroes, not colonial conquerors. We want clinics where our mothers receive care with dignity, not neglect. We want roads that connect villages, not pipelines that extract and vanish. True independence is not rejection, it's creation. And creation takes more than bravery. It takes belief, it takes work, and it takes all of us. Africa is not a region. It's not an underdeveloped market. It's not a resource to be tapped, or a statistic to be debated in foreign think tanks. Africa is a continent of power, geopolitical, cultural, spiritual, and we're stepping into that identity without apology. We don't seek to influence. We are the influence. We don't follow. We lead from the ground we know best. To those who still don't understand, who still cling to the idea that we can be persuaded, coerced, or managed, I offer this final clarity. The door you once walked through unchallenged is now guarded. The silence you mistook for agreement was restraint. That restraint is gone. We are not angry. We are certain. And certainty is far more dangerous to those who once thrived on our uncertainty. This isn't a threat. It's a shift. And those who resist it will find themselves out of place in a world where Africa is no longer absent from the conversation, but at the center of it. To my brothers and sisters across the continent, this is not the task of one leader or one nation. This is our collective inheritance. It's our moment to reclaim what was stolen. Our narrative, our resources, our pride. Don't wait for someone else to move first. Move in your own space, with your own voice. Organize, teach, resist, build, support leaders who defend you, not those who bow for funding. Every time we act from courage, the continent takes a step forward. Every time we refuse fear, a new future sharpens into view. The chains may not rattle as loudly anymore, but they still exist, in policy, in finance, in assumptions. And it's up to us to break them. We are not there yet, but we have begun. And this beginning is not small. It is seismic. What comes next is not written in Washington or Brussels. It is written in our cities, our villages, our hands. We are authors now. And the story we write will not be one of submission. It will be one of fire, of freedom, of future. This is not the end of something. It is the first page of everything.